would you like to be able to navigate grief without a timeline? Alyssa Rose will tell us how. She is a death doula and grief wellness guide. So, Alyssa, tell us please, how can entrepreneurs who are going through grief overcome it?
Heal Podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever. Shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Well, I talk a lot about grief as a lifelong relationship, because it's not only present with death, it's present with all change. It's present in the tension of life and death, of season change, of leaving the old job, getting a new job, even moving towards our dreams and creating our dreams. There's still grief for what has to die and what we have to let go of as we continue to live and to love. And so I really think of our relationship with grief as a lifelong one, and really want to invite entrepreneurs to come into contact with that and become curious and compassionate for the process and the unfolding of grief.
Thank you. So, in your opinion, grief is not just grief like the death of a person, it's actually the grief of different like life stages and this kind of thing as well, yeah?
Absolutely, yes. And one framework for this that I use a lot in my practice is one that comes from a man named Francis Weller, who's written a beautiful book about grief called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. But he speaks about the 5 gates of grief. And so grief associated with these 5 categories of things. The first is everything I love, I will lose, or I'll be separated from, or will change, it will change. The second one is the parts of myself that have not known love. So the grief that's connected with shame and self-judgment and self-criticism, and where have I not been my whole self and like shunned or fractured. The third gate of grief is the sorrows of the world, like all of what's happening in the world and the heartbreak of that. The fourth gate of grief is the biggest one in my practice, and really, a big part of, I believe, all of our lives is what I expected and did not receive. I thought if I was married, I'd feel this way. I thought my family would look like this. I thought my dream job would feel like this. So there's a lot of grief in that space. And the fifth one is ancestral grief. So the grief we arrive here with.
Wow, there's a lot more levels of grief than I ever imagined. Tell us more about the very first one. How would someone, or is it that every single type of grief gets kind of like overcome or navigated through similarly? Tell us what's the blueprint for navigating grief?
I am sorry to tell you that there's no blueprint, and that it's totally different for everyone, and that these stages of grief are really like a wide abstract idea of different kinds of emotions that can flow through us as we are experiencing grief, but that there is no blueprint and there is no defined stage or progression. There is no time frame. It is a continued exploration and a continued revealing of ourselves. For me, like grief is a continued expression of our love. We are in pain in the separation because of things we love about what we're separated from, or what things we're grateful for, things we long for that we don't have the same access to when there's a disconnection, or when the form of the relationship has changed. So I would say more than moving from a space of like, how can I overcome this, get over this, be better at navigating grief? It's really much more, I'm inviting more of this, like a space of curiosity, and like grief is a natural human response to loss and to change. It is healthy to feel grief. You're not meant to do it in a certain way or a clean way or an organized way. It is supposed to be chaotic and messy and out of our control. Like those are all parts of grief, and that's some of the nature of grief. So if you feel those things when you're in grief, then that's a very appropriate response to this thing that feels super overwhelming and out of our control.
Thank you. So tell us your 10 commandments for dealing with grief, because even though there's no like blueprint for how to like overcome it, there have to be some like some sort of steps or something that people can do, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, for me, I do a lot of one-to-one work with individuals, but I also do community work. And when it comes to grieving, there's usually a break in connection. And so it's really important to come into connection. We so often push grievers aside and away because we don't know what to say, or we're uncomfortable because they've gone through something hard, or we as the griever are uncomfortable to bring ourselves to public or to social gatherings because we don't want to be a bummer or whatever it might be, right? But we actually really need connection when we're grieving, even if you as a loved one to a griever have no idea what to say or no idea what to do. Just you making sure that they know that you're here and you being present with them is really important. So for people who are grieving, thinking about how you can ask for connection and seek connection, even if that means you are saying, hey, can you just listen to me tell stories about my person? Or can you just not give me any feedback, but just be quiet with me for 30 minutes while I share about X, Y, or Z thing? So number one, I would say connection is a really important piece. I think another piece is like trying to let yourself rest in the liminality of it. Liminality is such a part of the creative process too, right? And for entrepreneurs and creatives, like how, you're in a place of like, I don't know how it's all going to come together yet. That's where creativity thrives. Like that's where sometimes we feel the most alive, is when we don't have the answers. And that can be really present when we're grieving, of like, now what? Now what does my future look like? Now who am I now that this separation has happened? So just whatever you can do to like invite yourself back into the present, back into the liminality of it with grace for yourself is another big piece. I think a third one is often when there's grief, it's because like it's associated with a lot of negative emotions and hard to experience emotions, sadness and despair and hopelessness. I think it's really important to also make space for the other piece. Like, I miss my person who died because they used to throw these types of parties, or we used to love eating this dish together. Like, how can I enjoy these things still? Or how can I celebrate these things that represent the loss that I get to weave into my life moving forward and get to still engage with and explore? So we talked about connection, the comfort and the ease and the liminality, enjoyment, like the enjoyment and the celebration and the gratitude piece feels also really important. Ultimately, down the road as we go, I do think expression is really important. Telling our story and retelling our story and listening to how we're telling our story. Again, whether it's through words or music or dance or art, it's just like getting it out of our bodies is really important. So it doesn't just like harden and stay within us.
Thank you. That is very, very fascinating. It brings so much more light to something I knew very little about. And I would say grief is something that to me is something like I've been steering clear of, like even when like my grandma died or my grandpa died, I wasn't really like able to like fully do it. So as in like I tried to kind of almost pretend that it didn't happen. So I'm wondering for those people that are going through denial, because I think
Yeah.
that there are like some stages that people talk about. Like I think it's about 5 stages that I remember, like denial, anger, resentment, and I can't remember what the other steps were. Most people talk about in that way when it comes to the stages of grief. But I'm wondering, do you have like a different perspective? And how can people who are dealing with denial, for example, how can they cope with grief? How can they navigate grief? Like, for example, I don't think I've ever like really gone to the next stage, like for example, like with my grandpa and my grandma. At least I guess my grandpa, died, and I felt very guilty because he died and I didn't get to speak with him. And I didn't get to speak with him because every time I was calling him, it was my grandma that was answering, and I didn't want to talk to her because she was beating me up when I was young until I was about 18. So I felt very guilty for not, like not calling him more often, not having the opportunity to talk to him. And I
Mhm.
never really like went to the next level of from denial to something else. I just kind of pretended it didn't happen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's a supernatural response, right? Really, really common that there is a lot of denial, and we can be in denial a long time. Not only does it take the mind a while to understand that there's a big change has happened, especially in these close, like if a partner dies, it takes us a long time, our brain a long time to stop anticipating them to walk in the door and to stop like looking at our phone expecting them to call. It just that takes a long time. But then we have our own emotional piece around denial, and that can come from a lot of things, and it can be a part of coping. Actually, the denial can be supportive of us trying to exist through really, really highly emotional moments until we are more resourced and can, start to open the door there and start to like, wow, like they really are gone. They like really, this relationship really is forever changed. And when I say gone, I mean, again, form changed, whatever the beliefs, whatever you may believe about what happens at death. But a lot of the people I work with, it's like, my person has died, and now how I engage with them has to change. Like I see a blue dragonfly, and I think of them because they loved that, and that's a way that I connect with them now instead of being able to call them on the phone. Um, so denial is really natural. All of these, what have been highlighted as stages, they are all natural parts of grieving. It's just that they don't happen in that progression. And sometimes they hop all around, and then people can think that like, oh, I'm back at denial after all these years. How come I'm going backwards? And it's not linear. It's not linear, and it's not going to be similar between two people. Um, and so, like, as much as you can slow down, and even when you notice, like, oh wow, like denial is loud and clear here, and I still don't feel ready to really like lean into what it means that this loss has happened, or that I'm grieving a disconnection, or even the sorrows of the world. Like, um, yeah, so that's one I think there's a lot of denial around too, of like, I can't bear to witness what's happening, certain things that are happening in the world because I don't necessarily have control or power or ways to support that are enough or that can really change things. And so that can, in those cases, definitely we have denial, and denial can be supportive, but it can also be avoidant, right? So it's a balance, and I like want to help us all move away from judging ourselves and each other through grief, because that's so common, and we judge and we compare. Like, my grief isn't big enough because I'm grieving the loss of my dog, and someone else is grieving a loss of a baby, and or we do that to ourselves and to each other. So just like really trying to soften our judgment and our criticism and our comparing minds around grief.
Thank you. What else would you like people to know about grief?
Well, going back to kind of what I shared at the beginning around like what even is grief, I really believe that grief is a continued expression of our love. It is a declaration of what we long for. It is a lifelong relationship. It's a natural human response. And through grieving and being in community in our grief, having connection through our grief, I believe that belonging becomes more possible. So I feel we're very much in an epidemic of loneliness at the moment, and a core piece that's missing in our world is grieving together, grieving in community, being in spaces that are intentional and strong enough and spacious enough for us to show up with our whole selves, all of the joy and the celebration and the ecstasy, as well as the depths of despair and hopelessness that we also can feel. So there's medicine in tending grief in community. And I also feel like it's almost our responsibility to let ourselves feel our heartbreak and feel how brokenhearted we are about whatever the things in our world are that are breaking our hearts. Like, it's really important that we don't just stay busy and stay numb and stay distracted, and that we let ourselves feel the impact of these things, because that not only calls together the villages, and that's one piece, but it also ultimately helps us understand our purpose and our truth, and it ultimately can also help create action and aligned action for us individually, but also in community. I think when we tend grief in community, we really build a foundation of belonging, and only from there can we be playful, can we be creative, can we build resilient communities, and can we make the change that is needed in our world now.
Thank you. Tell us more about the 5 types of grief that you mentioned at the beginning. Is there any particular way for someone to deal with the specific types that you mentioned?
Yeah, this is not a science at all. So definitely a balance, and definitely more of an art and more of a listening individually, and trying things. Because a lot of us did not grow up with practices around grieving. A lot of us did not see our adults, our caregivers grieve in healthy or safe feeling ways. And so we're new here. A lot of us, not all of us. And so grace and like the space of learning. So the 5 gates, as described by Francis Weller, the first one is everything I love, I will lose. So the reality of impermanence. Tending to this gate, to me, there's this question of like knowing that everything I love, I will lose. How do I choose to love? How do I choose to live? Like, it's a really different approach to things when I really am embodied in that reality versus ignoring it and wanting it to be this way forever, and then being totally stunned and shocked when it changes, right? So, gate number 2 is the parts of myself that have not known love. A lot of that is around shame, judgment, self-criticism. Tending to that can look like many things, but starting to identify these parts of ourselves and bringing them back, and like reclaiming all of the parts of ourselves, even the parts that we've decided are bad and we don't want anyone to know that part is here, or we need to bring all of our parts back and come into an integrated way of being. The third one, collective sorrows, the sorrows of the world, our collective wounds. So many ways here. I mean, again, community grief tending. This could be based in nature, right? Like, how do I protect the nature places in my home that I love visiting? Do I just avoid the clear-cut forest, or can I go there and sit there and be with what is happening? Does it move me enough to change my actions so that instead of buying online, I might go to a local store to try to support that store and to try to reuse materials? The actions can be small or big, but really letting ourselves come face to face with some of it within reason, right? Within our capacity. The 4th gate, which is this really big one, I believe, is everything we love. Or no, it's this 4th gate is what I expected and did not receive. So taking the time to like even go back into what were my expectations. Often we have so many invisible or silent expectations that we didn't really know we were functioning with. We didn't really realize what weight they had in the decisions we were making. And then we get to this place and we're like, wait, I thought I was promised these things. And so like really owning, that could look like journaling, right? Really owning like, wow, these are the expectations and the assumptions I had. And these are the behaviors and actions I was taking based on those. And now, with the information I have and the reality I am in, I have choice and I choose whatever it might be, right? So, those are just some ideas. The fifth gate is the ancestral grief. How do I connect with my lineage? How do I connect with my family line, my traditions? Get to learn and get to know them, get to know the landscape where they lived, get to understand the stories that were maybe told and untold, and do that kind of ancestral healing work as well.
Thank you. I think it takes so much maturity for you to do this work. Can I ask you what kind of guided you on this amazing journey? And tell us more about yourself. Like, what made you teach people about how to navigate grief?
It was a windy road for me, and I got very interested. I really always wanted to work with people, and I was thinking about medicine, but didn't go into that route right away, and ended up coming into it through hospice volunteering, and then becoming a massage therapist so I could be at the bedside and offer care at the bedside, both energy work and body work, and was also present for two amazing grandmothers in their dying years and dying weeks and days. And I was just witnessing that the person who was dying was so deeply impacted by their loved ones and by the loved one's ability to accept or deny what was happening. It like directly impacted the person who was dying's capacity to have connection and to have presence and to feel less alone. And so that really like opened my eyes, and I went down a little personal study, and really, really diving into grief and why we're so bad at it, and how can we do this better and different? How are we taught about grief? And so that was like some of my way in. I personally found it through in my own life, this fourth gate, like what I expected and did not receive. I feel like was constantly showing up, but I didn't have language for. And I attended my first grief ritual maybe 2019, and it was in a tradition from West Africa, from Sobonfu Somé, who came from West Africa, came to the United States to help teach us how to grieve, because there was a question of like, how can people be hurting each other and destroying the earth like this? How is this possible? And the elders had said it's because they've forgotten how to grieve, and like sent her and Malidoma Somé, her husband at the time, to the United States to help remember. And so I study through their lineage and their students, and I practice through their that tradition as well in terms of community grief tending, and just approaching the community piece and seeing what happens in those circles has been so powerful from the first one. It was so powerful, and just, it kind of enveloped me, and here we are.
Thank you. So tell us what happens when someone doesn't move on from, for example, from denial in the same way that I haven't. What happens when someone doesn't kind of deal with grief relatively quickly? Like it's been, for example, I don't even remember how many years it's been, like 10 years, maybe more, since my grandparents died, and I still haven't gone back to think about it or anything. What happens when someone doesn't go from doesn't fully go through the entire stages of grief?
Well, again, I would say there's no progression. There's no appropriate way to go through it. Do you feel like you're in complete denial that these humans have died?
I'm not sure if denial is the right word. It's kind of like I just didn't take the time to, like, for example, honor their lives, like at least my grandpa, I definitely deeply care about him, and he was always a protector, from grandma.
Yeah.
So I think for him, I feel bad. I feel guilty thinking about him now that we're having this conversation, and now I'm, reminded of him. Otherwise, I would probably not think so deeply about him.
That makes a lot of sense. And to be honest, and in the Daguerreotypes tradition, like every funeral, though you are honoring the person who has most recently died, it's also a time where you honor all the other deaths. And so it's never too late. It's never too late to go back. It's never too late to, like, tonight when you're going to bed, take 5 minutes, or just in the evening, take 5 minutes and be like, oh, I really loved this part of this person. Or this person used to love eating this thing. So I'm going to make a dinner that they would have loved and enjoy it, and let that be a way that I connect with them. Or, like, it's never, ever, ever too late to just continue thinking about them and connecting with them. Many traditions believe, and cultures believe, that that the dead are still in our community. They are no longer embodied, but we are still community, we're still family. And so engagement in some cultures is really important. There are times where the veils are thin and we make a big dinner, and they come and we tell them everything that's going on in our lives, and we catch up. And even just having a picture of your person in your house is a way of remembering and grieving and honoring someone. So it can be really, really small. It's not like you need to tomorrow go to a 40-person grief ritual and make amends. You can weave these things in really natural ways to your individual worlds and lives and spiritual beliefs, in ways that are just meaningful and gentle reminders of how we've been impacted by things that we've now been separated from, things or people or beings.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
Yeah, my website is alyssarosehealingarts.com. And I also am on Instagram, Alyssa Rose Healing. So both of those places are great places to reach out.
Thank you.
Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health changemakers to live your healthiest life ever.